88. Wang Yun's plot to eliminate Dong Zhuo. Seeing that the various provincial governors and warlords opposing him were only focused on their own interests and posed no real threat, Dong Zhuo felt secure in his power. He declared himself Grand Preceptor, and demanded that Emperor Xian address him as Exalted Father. He also bestowed military titles upon his brothers and nephews, even granting a marquisate to his newborn child. For his own pleasure, he built a massive fortress 200 miles from Chang'an, known as Meiwu Fortress. He constructed thick, towering walls and stockpiled immense treasures and grain plundered from the common people. The stored food alone was enough to sustain him for 30 years. After completing Meiwu Fortress, Dong Zhuo boasted, "My great enterprise is now complete. China is mine. Even if I fail, I can retreat here and live out my years in peace. No one will be able to breach these walls." Dong Zhuo had already killed many officials in Luoyang, but after relocating to Chang'an, his cruelty only escalated. Anyone who carelessly misspoke risked being executed. Terrified for their lives, many officials secretly conspired to assassinate Dong Zhuo. Winning over Lu Biyu. Among Dong Zhuo's most trusted aides was Lu Biyu, a renowned warrior known for his great strength, archery skills, and mastery of horseback combat. Lu Biyu had originally been a subordinate of Ding Yuan, the governor of Bingju. When Dong Zhuo arrived in Luoyang, Ding Yuan was stationed there with troops. To eliminate him, Dong Zhuo bribed Lu Biyu with riches, convincing him to betray and kill Ding Yuan. After Ding Yuan's death, Lu Biyu defected to Dong Zhuo's side. Dong Zhuo adopted Lu Biyu as his foster son and kept him close as his personal bodyguard. Lu Biyu was always at Dong Zhuo's side, making it nearly impossible for anyone to assassinate him. Determined to rid the empire of Dong Zhuo, Minister Wang Yun devised a plan. He knew that to succeed, he first needed to win Lu Biyu over to his side. Wang Yun frequently invited Lu Biyu to his residence for drinks and conversation, gradually gaining his trust. Over time, Lu Biyu began confiding in Wang Yun about his relationship with Dong Zhuo. Despite their father-son relationship, Lu Biyu resented Dong Zhuo's temper. Dong Zhuo was hot-headed and violent, frequently lashing out at Lu Biyu over minor disagreements. One day, Lu Biyu accidentally offended Dong Zhuo, and in a fit of rage, Dong Zhuo hurled his halberd at him. Lu Biyu narrowly dodged the attack, barely avoiding death. Though Dong Zhuo later forgave him, Lu Biyu never forgot the incident. He shared his grievances with Wang Yun, who seized the opportunity to reveal his plan to assassinate Dong Zhuo. Wang Yun told Lu Biyu, "Dong Zhuo is a traitor and a menace to the empire. We wish to rid the people of this scourge. Will you help us from the inside?" Hearing this, Lu Biyu hesitated and replied, "But I am his adopted son. How could a son kill his father?" Wang Yun shook his head and said, "General, you are mistaken. You are Lu, and he is Dong. You are not truly father and son. And when he threw his halberd at you, was there any real fatherly love in his heart?" Lu Biyu realized the truth in Wang Yun's words and finally agreed to join the plot. The assassination of Dong Zhuo. In 192 AD, just after Emperor Xian recovered from an illness, a court assembly was held at Weiyang Palace. Dong Zhuo left Meiwu Fortress for Chang'an to attend the meeting. Fearing an assassination attempt, he wore iron armor beneath his robes. He also stationed heavily armed guards along the roads leading to the palace and ordered Lu Biyu to walk directly behind him, spear in hand. With these precautions, Dong Zhuo felt completely safe. However, he was completely unaware that Wang Yun and Lu Biyu had already put their plan into motion. Lu Biyu planted several trusted warriors disguised as palace guards at the entrance of the palace. As Dong Zhuo's carriage passed through the palace gates, one of these warriors lunged forward and stabbed at Dong Zhuo's chest with a halberd. However, the weapon hit his iron armor and failed to pierce through. Dong Zhuo raised his arm to block the attack, but the halberd cut into his forearm, causing him to cry out in pain. He jumped from his carriage, shouting, "Where is Lu Biyu?" At that moment, Lu Biyu stepped forward, raising his voice to announce, "By the order of His Majesty, we are eliminating the traitor Dong Zhuo." Dong Zhuo stared at Lu Biyu in shock and shouted in rage, "You ungrateful dog! You dare!" Before he could finish, Lu Biyu thrust his spear forward, piercing Dong Zhuo's throat. The soldiers then swarmed forward, beheading Dong Zhuo on the spot. Liu Biyu pulled out an imperial decree from his robes and declared, "By the emperor's command, only Dong Zhuo is to be executed, no one else will be harmed." Hearing this, Dong Zhuo's soldiers rejoiced, cheering, "Long live the emperor!" The fall of a tyrant. The people of Chang'an had suffered greatly under Dong Zhuo's rule. When news of his death spread, crowds filled the streets, singing and celebrating. Some families, overwhelmed with joy, sold their clothing and jewelry to buy wine and meat, holding grand feasts in celebration. The aftermath. Although Dong Zhuo was dead, the suffering of the common people was far from over. Not long after, Dong Zhuo's former generals, Li Ju and Guo Sai, led their forces back into Chang'an. They launched a brutal campaign of looting, burning, and massacring the city. Wang Yun was killed, and Liu Biyu was forced to flee, leaving Chang'an once again plunged into chaos. 89. The relocation of the capital to Shu City. After Dong Zhuo's downfall, the Eastern Han dynasty was left in name only, having lost control over the provinces and commanderies. Local officials, aristocrats, and warlords seized the opportunity to carve out their own territories, resulting in a fragmented political landscape. Some of the most powerful warlords included Yuan Shao in Jizhou, Yuan Shu in Nanyang, Liu Biao in Jingzhou, modern-day Hubei, Hune, and parts of Henan, Guizhou, Guangdong, and Guangxi. Dao Qian in Zhuzhou, modern-day Jiangsu north of the Yangtze River and southeastern Shandong. Liu Biyu, among others. These warlords fought ceaselessly, plunging China into chaos. Tens of thousands of civilians were slaughtered, and many areas became desolate wastelands, devoid of human life. Initially, Cao Cao's forces were weak, but he later defeated the Yellow Turban remnants that had invaded Yangzhou, modern southwestern Shandong and eastern Henan, establishing a stronghold there. He recruited skilled soldiers from among the surrendered rebels, expanding his army. Later, he defeated Dao Qian and Liu Biyu, emerging as a major military power. Emperor Xian's flight from Chang'an. In 195 AD, a violent conflict broke out between Li Ju and Guo Sai, Dong Zhuo's former generals, in Chang'an. Taking advantage of the chaos, imperial relative Dong Cheng and a group of ministers escaped from Chang'an with Emperor Xian, returning to Luoyang. However, Luoyang was a ruined city. Dong Zhuo had burned down the imperial palace and government offices, leaving behind only shattered walls and overgrown weeds. With no palace to reside in, Emperor Xian was forced to live in a dilapidated official's residence. Many court officials had nowhere to stay, and some built makeshift huts beside crumbling walls to shield themselves from the elements. The biggest crisis was the lack of food. Emperor Xian sent envoys to request grain from provincial officials, but they were too busy fighting for territory and ignored his pleas. With no other options, even officials of the lowest ranks were forced to gather wild vegetables to survive. However, these once privileged men were unaccustomed to hardship. Many collapsed from starvation after eating just a few meals of wild plants, dying beside the broken walls. Cao Cao welcomes the emperor. At this time, Cao Cao was stationed in Shu City, modern-day Xuchang, Henan. Upon hearing about Emperor Xian's plight, he convened a meeting with his advisors to discuss whether he should escort the emperor to safety. His chief strategist, Zun Yu, suggested. In the past, Duke Wen of Jin became hegemon by rescuing King Xiong of Ju and restoring him to Luoyang. Emperor Gaozu of Han honored the late righteous emperor, earning the loyalty of the people. History is full of such examples. Now, His Majesty is suffering in Luoyang. If you bring him to safety, it will align with the will of the people. But if you hesitate and let another warlord act first, we will miss this opportunity. Cao Cao found this argument convincing. He immediately dispatched Cao Hong with a military force to escort Emperor Xian from Luoyang. However, Dong Cheng and other ministers feared Cao Cao, and they attempted to block his forces. Eventually, Cao Cao personally arrived in Luoyang to persuade them, explaining, "Luoyang lacks food, and while Shu City has ample supplies, transportation is difficult. To ensure the emperor's safety, it is best for His Majesty and the court to relocate temporarily. Otherwise, everyone here will freeze and starve." Upon hearing that Shu City had food, the emperor and his ministers eagerly agreed. In 196 AD, Cao Cao successfully escorted Emperor Xian to Shu City, which became the temporary capital of the Eastern Han Dynasty, henceforth known as Shu capital, Shuju. Cao Cao's rise to power. In Shu capital, Cao Cao built a new palace for Emperor Xian, restoring court sessions. He then appointed himself Grand General, effectively assuming control over the imperial court. Using Emperor Xian's name, he issued imperial edicts to various warlords, starting with Yuan Shao. Cao Cao rebuked Yuan Shao, stating, "You control vast lands and command many soldiers, yet you only seek to expand your power by attacking other provinces instead of aiding the imperial court. Is this the duty of a loyal subject?" Despite his great influence, Yuan Shao was still nominally a subject of the Han Dynasty. Upon receiving the imperial edict, he had no choice but to submit a formal response in his defense. Next, Cao Cao issued an edict appointing Yuan Shao as Grand Commandant. This infuriated Yuan Shao, who saw himself as superior to Cao Cao. Angrily, Yuan Shao exclaimed, "Without me, Cao Cao would be nothing. And now he dares use the emperor's name to command me." In a fit of rage, he rejected the title and sent a petition refusing the position. Recognizing that his power was not yet secure, Cao Cao did not wish to openly confront Yuan Shao. To appease him, he resigned his own title as Grand General and instead took the lower rank of General of Chariots and Cavalry. With the imperial capital stabilized, a new problem arose: food shortages. The continued warfare of the past decade had devastated agricultural production, and famine was widespread. Without a steady food supply, Shu capital could not sustain its government and army. The implementation of the Tunchen system, military farming. A court official named Zhao Ji proposed a solution. "We should gather the displaced farmers and have them cultivate the wastelands surrounding Shu capital. The government will provide them with tools and livestock, and in return, they will share half their harvest with the state. This system will ensure a stable food supply." Cao Cao approved this idea and ordered the implementation of the Tunchen system. Within a year, abandoned farmland was reclaimed, and the harvests were abundant. In Shu capital alone, the government collected 1 million hu of grain. Seeing the success of the system, Cao Cao expanded the practice to other regions, appointing officials to oversee military farming. As a result, granaries were soon filled, solving the food crisis. Cao Cao's growing power. With control over the emperor, imperial decrees, and a secure food supply, Cao Cao solidified his authority. He also recruited brilliant strategists such as Zun Yu, Guo Jiao, and Man Chong, further strengthening his administration. By mastering political control, military strategy, and economic stability, Cao Cao transformed himself into the most powerful warlord in northern China, laying the foundation for his eventual rule. 90. The secret edict hidden in a belt. In the year 196 AD, when Cao Cao escorted Emperor Xian to Shu capital, Shuju, Liu Bei, who was then governor of Zhuzhou, was caught between attacks from Yuan Shu and Liu Biyu. After suffering defeat, he fled to seek refuge under Cao Cao. Liu Bei was born in Zhuo Commandery, modern-day Zhuozhou, Hebei, and was a distant descendant of the Western Han imperial family. His father died when he was young, leaving his family in poverty. Liu Bei and his mother survived by selling straw mats and weaving shoes. Later, with financial support from his clansmen, he was able to receive some education, but he was never very fond of studying. Instead, he preferred making connections with influential figures. One day, two wealthy horse traders passed through Zhuo Commandery and, recognizing Liu Bei's potential, decided to sponsor him, helping him recruit soldiers. During this time, two warriors arrived to enlist under Liu Bei's banner, Guan Yu and Zhong Fei. Impressed by their martial skills and shared ideals, Liu Bei formed a deep brotherhood with them, with their bond rumored to be even stronger than blood relations. According to folklore, the three swore an oath of brotherhood in the Peach Garden. After joining Cao Cao, Liu Bei fought alongside him to defeat Liu Biyu, eliminating Liu Biyu's territorial hold in Zhuzhou. After their victory, they returned to Shuju, where Cao Cao requested Emperor Xian to appoint Liu Bei as general of the left. Cao Cao respected Liu Bei greatly, keeping him by his side at all times. However, Liu Bei felt uneasy. He had his own ambitions and feared that Cao Cao might grow suspicious of him. Cao Cao, despite outwardly favoring Liu Bei, was also secretly wary of him. He had spies monitor Liu Bei's daily activities, but all they ever saw was Liu Bei tending to his vegetable garden, watering and cultivating plants, nothing that seemed threatening. Gradually, Cao Cao let his guard down. The secret edict against Cao Cao. Around this time, Emperor Xian grew increasingly resentful of Cao Cao's unchecked power. He secretly ordered imperial relative Dong Cheng to eliminate Cao Cao. The emperor wrote a secret decree, sewed it into a belt, and gave it to Dong Cheng. Upon receiving the secret decree, Dong Cheng discreetly gathered his most trusted allies, including General Wu Zilan, Minister Wang Zifu, and Cavalry Commander Chong Ji, to plan Cao Cao's assassination. Realizing that they lacked the military strength to oppose Cao Cao, they sought to recruit Liu Bei, believing that as a member of the imperial bloodline, he would surely support the emperor. Liu Bei agreed to join their cause. Cao Cao's suspicion. Not long after, Cao Cao invited Liu Bei for a banquet. The two men drank together, chatting amiably. Eventually, the topic shifted to the state of the empire. Cao Cao lifted his wine cup and said, "In today's world, so many people are fighting for control. But among them, who can truly be called heroes?" Liu Bei, attempting to be modest, replied, "I am not sure." Cao Cao smiled and, with a calm but piercing gaze, said, "In my opinion, the only true heroes of this age are you and me. Someone like Yuan Shao is nothing more than a pretender." Liu Bei was already nervous due to his involvement in the conspiracy, and upon hearing this, he froze in shock. His body trembled, and his chopsticks slipped from his hands. At that very moment, lightning flashed across the sky, followed by a deafening crash of thunder. Seizing the opportunity to mask his fear, Liu Bei quickly bent down to pick up his chopsticks, saying, "What a thunderclap! It startled me." Thus, he managed to conceal his panic, preventing Cao Cao from noticing his true reaction. Liu Bei's escape from Shuju. After leaving the banquet, Liu Bei pondered Cao Cao's words repeatedly. He realized that Cao Cao saw him as his only true rival, which meant that, in the future, Cao Cao would not let him live. From that moment on, Liu Bei worked even more closely with Dong Cheng and his allies, while also searching for a chance to leave Shuju. Fate soon provided him with an opportunity. Yuan Shao had sent his son to Qingju to rendezvous with Yuan Shu, and their forces needed to pass through Zhuzhou. Since Liu Bei was familiar with Zhuzhou's terrain, Cao Cao ordered him to intercept Yuan Shu. Liu Bei eagerly seized the opportunity to escape. As soon as he received his orders, he quickly gathered Guan Yu and Zhong Fei and marched out of Shuju with his troops. Cao Cao regrets letting Liu Bei go. Shortly after, Cao Cao's strategist Guo Jiao rushed to warn him. "Liu Bei is ambitious. You must not let him leave." Realizing his mistake, Cao Cao immediately dispatched troops to pursue Liu Bei, but it was too late. He had already escaped far beyond their reach. Once in Zhuzhou, Liu Bei defeated Yuan Shu's forces and seized control of the region. Deciding never to return to Shuju, he began solidifying his rule over Zhuzhou. Many of the surrounding counties and commanderies pledged allegiance to him, openly defying Cao Cao. Upon hearing of Liu Bei's betrayal, Cao Cao flew into a rage. Cao Cao's retaliation. The following spring, 197 AD, Cao Cao discovered Dong Cheng's conspiracy and executed him along with his three closest allies. Determined to eliminate Liu Bei, Cao Cao prepared for war. However, at this time, Yuan Shao had consolidated power over Yuzhou, modern-day northern Hebei and most of Liaoning, commanding an army of hundreds of thousands. He declared his intention to march on Shuju. Cao Cao's generals warned him, "Yuan Shao is your greatest rival. If he attacks while you are campaigning against Liu Bei, we will be in danger." Cao Cao replied, "Liu Bei is a formidable opponent. If we do not eliminate him now, he will become a greater threat in the future." Guo Jiao agreed, adding, "Liu Bei has just taken control of Zhuzhou, his base is unstable, and his support is weak. If we strike now, we will surely defeat him. As for Yuan Shao, he is overly cautious and indecisive. Even if he wants to attack, he will take his time preparing." Thus, Cao Cao devised a strategy. He stationed a portion of his elite forces at Guanju, northwest of modern Jiangsu, Henan, to defend against Yuan Shao, while he personally led his army to attack Liu Bei in Zhuzhou. Liu Bei flees to Yuan Shao. Realizing the danger, Liu Bei sent an urgent plea for help to Yuan Shao. Yuan Shao's strategist, Qian Feng, suggested, Cao Cao has left Shuju vulnerable. Now is the perfect time to strike. However, Yuan Shao hesitated and refused to act. Meanwhile, Cao Cao's forces stormed Zhuzhou, and Liu Bei, unable to withstand the assault, abandoned Zhuzhou and fled north to seek refuge with Yuan Shao. This marked the beginning of Liu Bei's long struggle against Cao Cao, which would later shape the legendary conflicts of the Three Kingdoms.